So the topic is ASO. How do you support growth in fast-moving, fast-growing mobile-first companies? Now, we heard before we have to break down the silo. Dora told us that. So that's one thing we need to do. You do have to get everyone on board first. So ASO is not alone. It's not the person in the corner doing keywords anymore. But supporting growth means teamwork. I'm going to start with you, Oksana, because you are the maker of a dream team, you said yourself. So who's on it to start?
Yeah, we got quite a big team. I work for G5, we work with games. We got a team of 12 ASO, which is not very typical, but we do that on a product company. We are really on the crossroads, so it's more and more cooperation with other departments, so it's always the UA, the cross-promo. That's what my colleague said before, Katja. It's one funnel that we share, of course, and that's like close to each other metrics that we track, and we depend on each other. So the communication there is the key, of course.
Mm-hmm. So it brings them all together, but you have to teach them the importance of ASO. That's one thing to communicate, or even over-communicate. You have to do that. Nika, I'm wondering from your perspective, you do a similar job at your company, but you also have to be very much on brand as well. So tell me a little bit, just to get us started, to understand how to drive that growth, how you educate them about ASO. Is it workshops? Is it something more informal or formal?
I'm part of the growth team, and we don't separate ASO and user acquisition, so we have the same strategy for everything we are doing, ads, ASO, organic, and we always need to share our results with our stakeholders. So we have a brand team, we have a social team, we have a marketing, enterprise marketing, and we try to educate them because they usually don't know much about their keywords optimization, about difference from the platform. So we run these workshops in the end of quarter, I can say, and we analyze what they did with what is working, in terms of A/B testing, what keywords we have now. We try to show them all results for experiments for every country. Mm-hmm. And we do sometimes funny things in the end, like a quiz. They can guess what is working better. And I see that it's good because people can learn more about the platforms and why they do these experiments and why this is important. And if you're talking about brand, it's really important to educate designers to look at their App Store optimization wider, not only follow the brand-like guidelines.
So that's the communication, that's the bringing together, but it's not just about cheap UA. And Thomas, you've been there, done that from the very start. How do you get to convince them to be very realistic? Because in a growth company, in a mobile-first company, it's about growth. But it is also about realistic expectations, and sometimes saying that some things aren't working, or maybe not telling them that, because it'll work in a bit.
No, I mean, there's definitely work around expectation. I think that topic is even bigger when you work like a, let's say, client and agency, and you're hired to a client would think that you would double the download with a few experiments, and it's just not going to happen unless the listing is really crap. But so I see this problem very acute when you're dealing with providers. Internally, it's not so much of a problem. It's not so much about expectations, but more about you mentioned education before. What is possible, what is not. Teaching them not only the process of what we do, but how it can convince them. And if I look at it from a very broad perspective, I really feel there was a big evolution of the field in the sense that we come from a very scrappy place of very often a one-man team, one man or one woman in many cases, doing stuff on their side. Started with keyword and then conversion, and then there's a lot of topics that come on top of it. And I can really feel how today, a lot of other teams have realized the potential power there is there and the need to sync between teams. And for me, it's not there is a lot of education around expectation and so on, but I can feel now other departments coming and be really interested. Live up teams coming, you can now stress the event into the store. How do I do it? Show me how it's done. From the branding team who for years didn't even look at what we had in the store, which is ridiculous because it's seen by millions of people, even in companies that have 10x less users than that inside. And we slowly came to the realization that this position is really central between all these teams. And there is a lot of education to work because typically those departments didn't look into the technicalities of ASO, but they started seeing like, oh, this can actually really move the needle. It's really connected to what I'm doing. And I feel today there is a lot of interest to that field. What makes it really tricky is it can't really be a one-man show anymore, like because there's so many subspecialties. That's why you're working with a whole team of people. I mean, the creatives and data analysts, and you need to be on top of the latest features. I was talking earlier with Stuart, who was showing us like how do you keep ideas before. How you can't hire a very good creative person that is super interested into the analytical data. It's very rare. It's a unicorn. There might be a couple in the room, but it's very rare. And very often it's uniting this to service the other teams. I really see that as an evolution, and I think it makes it exciting for us ASO practitioners, because instead of being in the corner of there's a dude changing some screenshot there, it really became a cornerstone of you get to work with the release cycle, with brand, with the paid UA team. I think it makes it a lot more exciting.
George, I was going to ask you the same thing, George, to chime in there, and also give me an idea of like how you work, like your typical day, because to his point, you're not in a corner, you have a lot of work, a lot of team building to do, but you still got to do your work.
Yeah, first of all, I want to add with Thomas stuff that I work with Thomas, and every topic that he brought, even the dumb person understand, and even for he can sell it from the dumb person. Non-ASO, everything about user acquisition, monetization as well. My approach is a bit different. Before working with particular teams, because right now ASO is more than user acquisition, more than organic user acquisition. It's also depending on branding as well. It's also depending on product, CRM as well within the recent iOS feature release. So before working with the team, I try to educate people. Yeah, so I try first to collect all people in one room or to do a set of training. What is ASO about? Yeah, the simple stuff, not like going in details. Yeah, and then I'm adding time by time the new presentation about how successful was, particularly in my case or in general, yeah, best practice from ASO, and people trust the hard numbers. Yeah, and it works.
But it's also a lot of experimentation, and you have an interesting situation, Nika, because you have a brand, right? It's a brand. It's healthcare assessment advice. I need to trust it. But you also want to experiment. I mean, what's the trade-off? Tell me a little bit about how you can try new things, you know, jump on a new Apple feature, but still deal with the brand, I wouldn't say the tension, but just, again, adjusting that, because you have to grow the company, but it has rules around how it wants to grow.
Yes, because we have a medical app and it's the health industry in general, it's really restricted. From the platforms, you can promote anything you want. And of course you have a guidelines and you have a medical guidelines which you should use. And it's the first you need to figure out what you want to test, all possible ideas, then to go to compliance, and then to figure out what you can say, because you can say whatever you want. It should be something approved. And then you go test. But you should think about user, because it's sensitive topics. You shouldn't, you should care, but not to scare them, because you need to touch something they care about, but not in the how games do it, like something like really catching attention. It should be really simple things, and also based on science, because you need to put there something about how you're doing this, why is important, and how is safe. Because privacy and safety is on the first. You need to put it on the screenshot also, and on some tests run around these topics. But brand is important because you should follow the guidelines, but you can do it in the creative way, because guidelines for colors, you can experiment with them with some new captures. You can find something new from user reviews and put there on screenshot, for example, like a user review, people talk about your app, how it helps you.
So you get a lot of ideas from the user reviews. I mean, creative is king. And yeah, absolutely, Thomas.
We
go
had
for
a
it.
little talk before with Nika and the other panelists, and there's something she does that I thought was really smart, and I'm not doing enough. Like typically when I have something a little bit risky, I would try in a different country and try to bring some numbers, like, look, this is really better, so we're going with it. But she's got a better sneaky tactics, which is she changes things slowly, and people don't realize the change over time. And I thought it was actually kind of interesting approach to like, no, I'm not moving all the blue to pink, but slowly an element here, and that went through, people get used to it after a month or two, and then she changed another, and on a long period of time, you can make actually very radical change this way. And I thought that was a creative way to go around some of the internal limitation you might find.
So slow and steady, winning the race. That's a good tip, though.
I can add that in most, like in some cases, brand sucks because app doesn't have enough time to spend on branding, and it's just like just an opinion on one people or group of people, mainly for founders. I'm talking about the app, small app developers. So in terms of that, there is always conflict between brand and the user acquisition, because sometimes the user acquisition brings way more traffic versus to put just the branding stuff. So you have to somehow compromise on that and convince them, do some testing in small area or in the area that is not super important for company, the test, and then show that, okay, guys, actually you have to move in this direction because it works better than that. Yeah.
And in gaming, I want to bring that up, Oksana. I mean, that is the vertical where, first of all, people love to play. It's a big playground, a big sandbox. How do you deal with the request for the big shiny toy? Yeah, I mean, I'm talking to a lot of people because their growth, they're a mobile-first company, is saying we can grow, we can nail incrementality. Won't that be easy? And or things, yeah. Looking at Thomas. And there's one marketer who told me that that's like heaven. You dream about it, but you can't necessarily attain it. So on that note, tell me a little bit about that discussion. How do you tell them, we can do a lot of great things, but that toy, well, put it on hold?
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, we don't depend very much on the branding to come back to the previous topic. There are a lot of seductive things to actually try and test. There is always a place for prioritization, so we try different directions and test different metrics, and then decide where to put our efforts to. So be it the keyword optimization, which is rare, be it a collateralization, be it, of course, creative testing. So it depends on which metric we actually work on, and then from the great pool of the activities we actually have on our plate, we select the one that actually will improve that exact target, so reach that exact target.
I mean, it happens all the time. I'm just curious, how do you break the news when you didn't pick the winner? It's an experiment, it didn't work out. Is it something that because before you're by yourself, you say, well, it didn't work out, I'll try something else. But now you're in the center, and you're a resource that the marketing team depends on. How do you do that? How do you break that news? How about our no BS down there at the end? What do you just say?
I think
we just blew it.
I think the events organizer did it for purpose to share one microphone between me and Thomas because we talk a lot. Regarding what was the question regarding
breaking the news?
Yeah,
in a no BS way.
Actually, I'm selling even the bad news with team, because within even bad news, you can find the insight that, okay, guys, this doesn't work. For instance, with games, there is like some characters that you can test. And I have experienced working with one game that we tested during 2 years. Like for instance, feature graphic, and it wasn't successful. We test everything, but we know for sure that specific stuff doesn't work. For instance, if you put one main character, or if you put the character and boss, or if you put the characters and heroes, what happens? So you just have to share even the failed experience with the team. It's even better than do a winning. If you do a winning and you are the best team, you might get in the point that you are overcome or yourself, and that's it. You are done. Yeah, that's it. You're gonna lose the concentration, and if you think that you are the best in the industry, you failed. immediately. So it's better to, even the fails, you have to share with the teams and you have to pay attention and get insight that, okay, this we test, it doesn't work because of that, and let's move within the next iteration with something else, yes? That's my approach. Thomas?
I guess failure is part of the experimentation. Anyone who would tell you that 8 out of 10 of their tests succeed is bullshitting. This is just not true, and it's not only in ASO. The reality is most tests fail. This is the part of the game. I see this through two lenses. One is, if the day you find a winner, the winner will make such a difference that it doesn't matter that the previous 8 failed. You're working towards finding that one. And the game can be so big that it's just part of the process. You have to accept that. Nobody will pick winners all the time. I think in UA it's even worse. Like my fail rate is higher than in ASO. So the background I have used me to failing, and that's fine. The other one is you never really fail. You fail if you fail to learn something. But when you test something, it's not like you randomly spit thing on the wall and see if it works. Usually you have an hypothesis. It's like, what if we go with strong colors? What if we add characters? What if we put this seasonal stuff? When it doesn't work, maybe you need a couple tests to validate that it was not just random, but you learn that this thing doesn't work. For me, this is a win. I learned that I'm not going to do that in the future, that I'm going to take a different direction. And at the end, the test, they're here to validate an hypothesis or not. If you can invalidate the hypothesis, I think this is a big win. Because then you move forward toward other things. So, yeah, they're part of the game, and it's the process that is like this. Whoever doesn't want to embrace failure should not go for that field.
What do you do with the ideas that maybe failed? You know, you don't fail, it's testing, so it's an exploration. But at the same time, I've spoken with so many marketers who tell me that, you know, we just put it aside somewhere, and then we looked at it again a couple weeks, a couple months later, and we tried it again. This happens a lot with creative, and hey, it worked. How do you sort of maintain this balance of it's not working now, but it could work later, and keep that focus? I'm just curious. I'll start with you, Oksana, though, because games have this. This is your reality. It's every day something else. Every minute it's something else. But you have to keep that balance. How do you do that?
Yeah, exactly. That's the key. Every minute it's something else. So whenever you have a backlog of your ideas and they sleep there and they wait for this small change to click. So users change, tendencies in the world change, events happen, and that can be a right timing for your idea in the backlog. So that's actually a smart thing to have this backlog and not to chaotically spill the ideas somewhere on the background, and have them registered and a place to come back to. So you have them listed. But yeah, there is always a moment and things happening around for the thing to try.
I think I can add here that usually when Apple or Google release a new feature, it's unsuccessful because the product team spent too low time to develop it, in my opinion. Yeah? And then they improve it. Then improve it inside their tool. And you have to, first of all, you have to go ahead and test to be a first in the market. And then if you failed, you have to come back, for instance, in several months and do again testing, because maybe something new features, they add some cool stuff on it, or maybe they do more proceed stuff, yeah? And then you're going to win, and you're going to find out your way out.
I mean, you raised the question, and that's always been the easy win. If anything, just jump on the newest feature Apple brings out, then you will be the app that's done it, and that's a great example. And that will do a lot for awareness. I don't know what it does for the longer life cycle of the app. Is that still the easy win? You can take it, and then we'll. Yeah, I want to hear from everyone.
So
because the easy wins, what they are.
My main company, Airapps, by the way, guys, cool company. Join us. There are free spots within UA. so remote stuff. So join us. So our company is very cool because we are working. We are competing. Our product, our apps are competing the direct competitor of Apple, and we have only iOS devices. So for us, it's very hard to get advantage of App Store, for instance, if we don't implement the stuff at the first place. Yeah. So good news for us that their apps are super slow to implement something new from their feature. So as soon as new feature arrived on Apple, we are the first who implemented that, and because of that, we are gaining more visibility. We are gaining more benefits of it, and Apple are appreciate to implement. Apple are appreciate for the apps or the games who implement at the first stage their new feature, and that's why we're getting a huge visibility and benefits of it. Yeah.
I want to continue with that, the idea of maybe that feature, but overall, perhaps the tactics that still give the biggest uplift, because again, in a mobile-first company focused on growth, you have to bring results, you need buy-in from the team, in a sense. What do you use to make that statement? Is it the Apple feature? Is it something else, Thomas?
There's a lot of trial and error, but you just have to do it, and eventually you find a winner, and it's so big that everybody aligns on it. And that makes the reason of using these new features, like Georgie explained. First, we do it because usually we like these new toys, the new shiny toys, so we want to use them. Even if they're useless, we still got to try them because it's fun. The second reason is bigger companies actually are going to be slower, so you have an advantage here if you can move on faster. Usually the benefits are earlier at the beginning. Users are not so used to it. Apple in particular tends to give huge benefits at the beginning. I remember the first in-app events back in November or December, can't remember the date. The visibility boost was massive. Today, let's say it's medium, and I can see how in 2 or 3 years everybody's doing it. Of course, the visibility cannot be millions for everybody. So jumping in early enables you to unlock sometimes some of those wins, and you can bring them back to the team and say, look how big this was. And that's why we're moving fast. Bigger companies have other assets and resources. But I mean, if startup can't move fast, they're doomed. That's the being scrappy is sometimes the best weapon you have, so you have to jump on that. So yeah, shiny toys and jump on it soon. It's never ideal. Usually, I don't know, there's a lot of things that are broken with this feature, but it's nice to learn on the go and exchange together and find the little wins this way. At the end of the day, you will find one winner, and all the fails, they will be forgotten because the win is so big. So that's the way, for me, that's the way to proceed.
Oksana, weigh in that for me for a moment. You know, it's all about the results. They need to speak for themselves. What is the tactic? What is something you did that gave you the biggest uplift, maybe even to your own surprise?
I would say that now we pay a lot of attention to localizing stuff and trying different things in different locales. It pays off, especially when we get back to the process of sharing the insights and so on. It's very important to shape the process of insights. So sharing the failures, sharing the highlights, shapes the process of interchanging the information, and then brings the results. So for us, it's now localizing stuff, and we weight a lot of things from there. Okay. Yeah.
And could you unpack that a little bit? I mean, localizing, that is different now. There are some twists. I've heard some great ones. What's yours? Because there's a lot of untapped opportunity in localization.
It's not hard to tell on spot.
Well, maybe not all of it.
Yeah, I'll have to think of it while we talk. Yeah.
Okay, well, we won't know that one. Maybe during the break. Nika, same question for you. Something that creates, you know, a massive uplift and shows those results. Because, as Thomas said, yes, a couple hits, a couple misses, but the real hit, that's what is the most convincing. What is one of yours?
I can say this about Ada Health because it's pretty stable, uplift, but localization is the key for every market, but not even localization now, but adaptation for every market, because you need to understand how people think, their needs in the specific market, and then you can test these messages on your screenshots. Then you can add specific things that people search in this market, and even from my experience, even their colors, visual elements could be totally different. Analytics give you like visibility in every market, and you see that people appreciate. Then you speak to them in their own language and understand what is problem here. Because USA, for example, and UK and health is totally different things. People search and people needs. The same in Germany and let's say Romania. So you need to address this message, and localization and adaptation of screenshots, keywords and everything helps a lot.
So let's stay on the idea of how it works together in the company. Now it's product, it's marketing, it's engineering, it's CRM we heard earlier. There's a lot going on in there, and everyone has their turf, brand, performance. I'm just wondering at a personal level, you know, is it a battlefield? How do you stand your ground in something that's becoming so central to an organization? Maybe I'll ask Thomas, because I think you've also had to deal with this and have some tips for not just adjusting the levels of expectation, but stress levels as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's always some friction in some areas because, I mean, we talked briefly, but like brand and performance, you mentioned something between organic and paid. Like, there will be friction between what the brand wants to allow, the experiments we want to do. I think it's part of the process to deal with that. You don't have like to have it to be a fight. You understand also, I mean, personally, I was more on the scrappy side and testing all kind of shit around and sometimes not respecting anything. And I learned a lot from actually how the brand team came with these guidelines and limits, which for me were really arbitrary at the beginning. I was like, this is frustrating me. I can't move on. And actually, when we started interacting more together, and it was just not them throwing their brand police limits at me, but more, you get a bit more involved over time, and then you see how they came there, like, I don't know, maybe through their own qualitative user research, and you start to understand how they came to the conclusion. I actually learned a lot from it, and say, yeah, actually it makes a lot of sense. I've done a lot of stuff in the past that I should, and I've done because now I understand it, but it takes a while. It's just you have to be a little bit patient, and you have to be interested into the other's person area. And I think for a long time, this was like, we were in our corner, so it was like, okay, these guys are bringing this to the table. I'm just going to pass on that and do my own thing. And you really grow up as a professional when this interaction becomes deeper and more over time. There's a lot of learnings to have. It's not an easy walk in the park. I had a bunch of fights, but I consider myself having a much broader perspective now that I've been through these battles, and I don't see them as battles anymore.
So it's better together, is that what we're saying, Oksana?
Exactly, it's about the communication again. And I just wanted to share. I wanted to add that still the presentation skills matter here. So you have to present the results and make people understand the area of what you do and how you can serve them with your action and how they can be also, their actions can be beneficial for you. So that's about the communication, right?
So a lot of it is the presentation, the education, the results, they speak for themselves. But at the same time, marketers want to work with you better. If you could talk to a marketer and say, this is how you would get more value out of ASO. This is how you get more value out of our relationship. What would that look like? What can they do, and how can you work together differently to really unlock the value of ASO? Maybe I will start with you, Nika.
As I'm a marketer, performance marketer, and ASO manager, I'm totally fine and explain myself why it is important. But as I have a growth team and my user acquisition manager, she understands how it's works because my point is always the up page is a final, final step before the user will install the app. So you should send them to this page and they will see it after ads, after social post, everything. So it should be optimized in the better way and aligned with user acquisition, like in all ads you have, or sometimes like explain after ads, something like that. And next thing is I always try to explain every person in marketing with whom I work, please use App Store or Google Play, search for the app, understand user behavior, because without that, your work is not the full, because you think about some user in a vacuum, but it's not how real people behave in stores.
Unlocking the power of ASO. George, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I can add that first of all, you have to be proactive. You shouldn't wait until a product team or UA team contact you and say, hey, you know, we heard about ASO, please do this or do that. We have events or whatever. You have to be proactive, look through and check what is the roadmap of product, what is the roadmap of user acquisition, what kind of activities will happen in future, in nearest future or in this quarter. And based on that, maybe develop some ideas for app store optimization and sell to these guys because they will be interesting if they will get additional help not from their department but from other departments, and because it's their main OKRs and it's their main goal in this quarter. So in that case, you can easily make a deal with them. Yeah.
So there's a shift in what ASO is and offers, and there's a bigger shift out there because it was very focused on UA. But if you listen to, for example, Brian Balfour over at Reforge, retention is the real growth engine. So now you're going from UA focus to life cycle focus. Tell me about how you shift your mindset and your skill set to support there. Maybe I'll ask you, Thomas.
I mean, there's just so much you can do in ASO for retention. But at the end of the day, like there are some small stuff you can do. First, like returning user don't see exactly the listing the same way. So typically, the what's new would be oriented more at returning user because it shows up so high. The in-app events is the obvious one here because you can like show stuff that happens in the app and try to reactivate these guys and so on. So that would be like some levers and some at tactical level. I think from a strategic standpoint, you have to forget that ASO is about acquisition of what people see in the store, but more you're one step in the journey. And typically also with UATs, but with product teams, like you're one step in that journey. How do you make it go along? The UA people try to convert impression into events. You're one of the multiplier that can act on that. And it makes you as an ASO professional a lot smarter to see like, okay, these guys are showing this creative, my step is this, maybe the onboarding team is doing that, and try to look at that and like, oh, actually, this one looked like a winner, but if I switch to first-time retainer, or if I look at my overall metric and I see it's going down, maybe it wasn't that much of a winner. It kind of forces you to get a broader perspective on things. It obviously makes things more complex because you have to look at more things and connect with more people. But I think it also makes it a lot more exciting. Sometimes we're a little bit limited in the ASO field with what we can do. It's super exciting to see that we're part of this journey and raise the coherence and look behind just the few metrics we got and look at other people and realize that we can actually move their metrics. So for me, it's more of a personal growth to understand the other departments and how you're just one piece in that puzzle and working together. Makes it exciting, but it doesn't make it easy, I have to say.
Oksana, same?
You also have to be a very strong piece in that puzzle because usually it's typical for gaming from what I saw from my past experiences. UA, which is the bigger part of the marketing team, is usually very pushy against misleading creatives and so on. Please put them on the App Store. Let's turn it a little bit closer to our advertising and so on, like to ads that work. And here it's important to say a word about the retention, meaning people, yes, we can show your misleading creatives as well on the App Store, but look, it won't work in the end. So that's also important.
What about honing those skills? You have to do that at Ada. I mean, you can talk to yourself maybe in your department, Nika, but still lifecycle marketing, you know, getting those skills, it's complex. It's a different set of metrics as well. And we heard before, you always have to rally around the same KPIs, but you have to open the aperture of how you view that as well. How do you do that at Ada? How do you turn yourself from a growth marketer into a life cycle marketer?
I learn a lot. I try to understand there are many parts of marketing, like a creative testing, data. From my side, I'm learning SQL, trying to visualize something in dashboards like Tableau. I go deeper to the funnel, not only on the app view, then install, download, everything. It's happening after. So I try to understand the user behavior, and from it I try to understand how to attract these users from my part, but analyzing the whole funnel helps me, and this additional skill which I learn, it also helps me.
Of course, that's complex. You teach, you add, it's a personal journey, it's personal growth. You invest in it by saying, I'm going to learn these things, I'm going to master these things. But at some level, marketers are never alone now because they have also marketing automation. So there's a third person or third entity at the table with you. There's you, there's the marketing automation. George, tell me about that from your perspective, because I know that's an area you're also very interested in. But how do you sort of coexist, co-create when it's you, the marketing department, and the marketing automation, the AI?
Yeah, actually, marketing automation is really cool to have in the marketing department, because you can skip avoiding waiting for years for product team, because some stuff you have to wait for ages to do a small tweak. So if you have a tech team, it's a really cool stuff, because you have a tech guy inside who can do whatever you want, any dashboards or whatever. In terms of app store optimization, what we've done in different companies is we built the ASO KPI dashboard with all KPIs that we can track on a daily basis, on a monthly or weekly basis. So all stuff. If something changed, for instance, the keywords for specific, the main keywords for specific, we can get alert. Or if our ranking drops, we can get immediately respond on that, or see what happens, or analyze the stuff. So in my opinion, automation is one of my favorite topics, because still there are many companies, they don't have automation inside the online marketing, and they are rely on product team, which has other priorities, and marketing will not be their top priorities, never, in their life cycle and in their roadmap. Yeah? So to avoid this and to increase efficiency, I recommend you guys to think about to add at least one MarTech or EdTech guy who gonna do everything you want, from dashboard till automated analysis. Yeah, that works.
So where do you go for the mentoring? Where do you go? I mean, it's a personal growth story, but not every company is going to necessarily say, oh, well, then we need to have these skills, or we need to teach these skills, or we need to give you time off to learn these skills. How do you continue the learning that allows you to be the force you are in a growth company? They want to grow, but do they invest? Should they be investing in your personal growth? Is that your responsibility? What do you think, Thomas?
I mean, if the companies don't believe in you, get off. Huh? There's enough work out there for what we do to not bother with companies who don't want you to grow inside. Don't bother working in this situation. The market is so there's a lot more demand from companies than offer from talented people.
True.
If you're in this situation, don't lose your time.
Okay.
Time flies. Just move on. There's a lot. Most of the companies I work with have this integrated, that they're betting on their employees. Sometimes there's a bit of negotiation to do because it's not super obvious at the beginning where you're spending your time. But honestly, in most cases I see, companies want to bet on their employees and make them grow up. So I never saw that as a real fight. If I see it, I just fire the client.
Straight into the point. There are some who say, well, you need to sort of take the initiative, but you're in demand. Maybe it's a different area from some others. I want to talk about the future of ASO. It's changing. It's becoming more complex. It's becoming more demanding. You're in more demand. We've got life cycle. We've got retention. What do you think the future of ASO, just looking to the next year, what is the one change that you think we need to prepare for right now, and how should we prepare for that change? I'll just go down the line here with some actionable advice. The change you see, how do we prepare for it now? Nika.
I will pass to Thomas. I need to think a few seconds.
Okay, you can think for a few seconds. George is already grabbing for the microphone,
start,
so it's
guys.
definitely
no
George.
No worries, I will be, my speech will be long, so you will have a time to think.
Thank you.
So regarding changes, yeah, we see that in recent years, I observed actually that, and many my colleagues as well, that from keywords, yeah, both app stores switching from keywords volume going down, and mostly they are pushing on different visuals and different kind of video, different kind of assets. So it's more like kind of editorial content. So in this direction, I think they're gonna continue to increase the engagement in both stores. Because people are bored to see the just text and whatever they want to do more, more engagement stuff, like maybe even they implemented stories, like the Insta stories that like there will be app stories or whatever. Or because in this kind of direction, if this is one direction that I see. Another direction I see that they try to do kind of custom product page, and it's not ideal right now. But I think it's a key, and they are doing in the right direction. And if they do a different, if they do several iterations in this direction and improve this feature, that might be a key stuff of increasing the conversion rate inside the store, because you're gonna send the message to the proper segment with the proper value proposition, yeah, and not just the generic stuff that we had in past on App Store. Yeah, so it will increase the volume, and the people gonna search directly. And time spending on app stores, and increase your conversion rate as well. Yeah, this is the direction that I observe. Yeah, Thomas,
Okay.
what about you?
Going to continue with that?
I also think we're going that way with basically more personalization. Like, so CPP is just, an imperfect start, and we're all dying for Facebook and TikTok to actually put it there. But in the long term, we can see how the App Store has always been a bottleneck. Now you have to show one thing to everybody, which is a massive problem that web marketers don't have. There is small progress. I hope we'll see the moment that we can show returning users something different to new users, that CPP are a lot more common, that Google will finally release the beta where on UAC you can do that as well, that they mentioned 2 years ago and nobody has actually seen it. We're going into that direction, it's just taking time. But for me, it's like we're not seeing it because it's slow progress, but breaking this bottleneck of mobile in the store is actually a huge fundamental change in the store. We're in a hurry. We want this be this faster, but it's coming slowly. There's one thing that I'm keeping an eye on that can be a really big change. I've always said that I don't believe it's going to happen. The European Union wants to allow side loading on the App Store. And so in this case, it's going to rock our world pretty much. I'm not sure the UE is going to manage to enforce that, but if it happens, it's going to be pretty massive. And if it happens, it means not only like lots of third-party stores, but possibly we will be able to sideload from website directly. And in this case, the bottleneck is completely disappeared. I still think it's a long way ahead, and Apple will fight that. But from one way to another, it is going into that direction. And I think it's a very powerful tool that we can personalize the experience a lot more, depending on the source of the traffic, depending on is it returning, depending on what the... so yeah, we're definitely going into that direction.
I do have to follow up on that because you're telling us what you think is coming. I just wanted to understand, prepare for it now. What? If these changes are coming, we want to prepare. Can you give me an idea how to prepare if this is very, very obviously, very closely, very likely going to be the situation?
I mean, following what's happening, like at least to be informed and not miss such a huge news, but that's not a huge deal. You can't really prepare for something that you don't really know if it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and most importantly, how it's going to happen. So just keep updated. I guess if that change comes, we will see it. It's true for other topics, not only side loading, that it's a field that changes very rapidly. It's your duty to follow the news and the new release and the features and change like this. So just keep updated, and when it happens, the best part is having a community where you can actually ask and share. This is where, like in the ASO stack, when, oh, the PP was so cool. And then we've got 10 practitioners here who shout, oh yeah, but they fucked up when there is no new release. Oh, and the icon is this way, and a dude writes an article. So it's really nice to have peers. You don't have to figure out all by yourself. Like, there's other people like you that are having the same struggle. It's really cool to be able to exchange and learn this way. So it's not reading the headlines from the European Union or Apple, but actually asking your peers. And I mean, a lot of people are really open in this industry. So that, for me, that's the way to prepare, is like keep your network and discuss about it.
Hard one to follow now, Oksana. What is your thought about the change coming and how to prepare for it now?
Yeah, listening to guys talking about the new features and preparing for them. I also, I'm expecting myself from the start that we will have even more data about the users, so we'll know the user from different size. So when we have the opportunity to segment them, we'll see the metrics on all of them. I mean, a bit more of numbers and a bit more of even more optimized and effective work. So that's my expectations here.
Excellent. Nika, you're up.
Yeah, I'm from Australia. I expect it will be more accurate and more powerful in terms of tools. Now we have a CPP, PPO, everything, but it's not working how we expect. And also I'm waiting of improvement of Apple search ads, because they, in my opinion, they work just like to force you to spend more money, but not really accurate in terms of relevancy to your application. And I hope Apple can be more powerful tool in terms of advertisement and targeting and retargeting users.
Excellent. Last word, because we're at time now. I'm watching the time. I was thinking, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. That's what I thought of. Not just because I like Spider-Man, but because everyone's talking about the central function of ASO, how it's going to be distributed in the future. Who should run it? Or what would you give as advice to running a, you know, a rock star ASO function in the future? George.
I think, first of all, don't listen your colleagues too much, especially the CEOs or co-founders or whatever. Put yourself in your customer shoes. Because they have their own opinion, and based on my experience, most their opinion fails. Yeah? So do more tests. Keep the branding concept if you can do this, and do more focus on customer oriented versus on C-level oriented. Yeah, whatever it might mean. Yeah, this is my top advice for.
Well stated, George. Thomas, quick word from you.
There's many ways to organize this because it's so central. Every company will find its own ways to articulate, so it's hard to pinpoint at one structure that is perfect. But I think through the rest of the conversation we had, it's embracing that it becomes pluridisciplinary, and that you might have an automation engineer and a creative. It's not just you. It's like a team of different skills. Obviously, you want somebody with a fairly broad perspective to lead that team, because you need to get interested into, we mentioned it, like a product and CRM and brand and stuff. So you need somebody who has a bit of perspective around the other teams. And we mentioned stuff about communication. I think at some point, it also needs to go both ways. And I said earlier, I made a lot of learning looking at why they put this. The leader of this pluridisciplinary team needs to not only be educating about ASO, but actually be willing to hear and be educated about all these areas where they're less of a specialist. And so you need somebody who's pretty broad, but also pretty open for not forcing like, okay, I know my stuff about ASO. Yeah, maybe, but you're actually stuck at brand and CRM and this, so be open to receive this education the other way and bring it back to your team. That's a high bar, but.
Same for you, Oksana.
Yeah, I of course agree with Thomas. Yeah.
I think we all do. But.
Yeah. Since we have so many people in the team and whose support we can get more data, more insights, and be more focused on the global aim that we're all actually trying to reach at the end. So yeah, we have just more instruments. So keeping ourselves learning externally and internally, that will be also keeping us, keeping us successful, I guess.
There you go.
Become the best body of the product team from the previous talk. So you need to be aligned with every team you have, and you need to support them, not just like, yeah, guys, you need to do this. You need to have a connection between your stakeholders, and you need to have a strategy. That's why you need to understand how data works, how creative part works, what your designer, I think, what about your work, and you need to have experience in everything a little bit.
Well, that is a fact-packed panel. I'm really impressed because I've also taken back some ideas as well, and I'm not even in the industry. So I just want to thank our panel for some actionable insights and some fun, and especially no BS from George. Thanks, everyone.